Access Manager gives us the option to tell the computer, and in particular the NDI libraries that are on the computer, what's going on the network outside of the traditional NDI expected infrastructure. So if you're saying, well, John, what's kind of expected? It's like, well, from what I observed and from what I've known for the past 3 years, it appears to me that an NDI, a typical NDI network, is a single flat VLAN network that has its own DHCP service. So that includes multiple other things, a proper gateway, you know, potentially internet, potentially not. That's not really required, but definitely units that are running in, or a service like a DHCP service that has proper routing and, is a proper TCP unicast network. That's out of the box what I think NDI is looking for. Something with horsepower. NewTek actually goes on record and says they don't want you to use unmanaged switches, and they talk about that in their NewTek University course. So that's actually them on record saying that. And they also say don't use smart switches, which is something that we've also been saying for quite some time. So we're in lockstep there. But a managed network, DHCP service with a DNS, MDNS service, and at least a single flat VLAN across all switches. Now, if you're doing multiple switches, obviously bigger pipes between the two is great. So you could do a gigabit connection, just a single link, but you could link aggregate those ports and do 2 gigs, or you could trunk fiber cables and get up to 20 or more. So if that's all foreign language to you, let's just stick with the single switch conversation. So we've got a managed switch, and it's in TCP mode, and it's got a DHCP service on it. That would make it a layer 3 switch, because DHCP is a layer 3 service. And so you're going to have that up and running, and it's going to be governing its own IP addresses, and it's going to be isolated from any other traffic that you see on the network. So that is how that goes. All right. Well, Access Manager then allows us to basically tell the network if other things are going on, tell the computer if other things are going on. And in particular, we can add external sources. That's kind of the first thing. I don't really know why it's the second tab, but anyways, the first thing that this thing can do is you can add external sources on other subnets. So let's say that I'm running a subnet of 192.168.10 dot something. That is my TCP network here. But I'm also running on a different switch a subnet of 192.168.20 dot something or 30 dot something. And we're all, in theory, you can, on a computer, you can see all those sources, but for encoders and decoders, you can't. And for TriCaster, I don't think you'd be able, well, you might be able to cross, I don't know particularly. But if we want, for example, to be able to see all sources on all subnets, we could add the IP sources here as external sources on a different network. So we say it's a type, it's an NDI device, and we could say 192.168, 20.15 is the camera that's over there. And the device name, the local device name, is whatever it is, BirdDog dash yada yada yada. Well, it won't be that long. Something like that, and it'll be in channel 1, and we can say okay. Then when you hit okay and you add it to the list and we click okay, it will add that source as something that the NDI library should be looking for. Okay, so let's throw NDI up here and see what we can find out. So it doesn't see anything at that source right now, but if it were to come online at that IP address, it would show it in this list as an option to pull that up. Now, I don't have multiple subnets on my own network because that's not something we're testing. We're not doing like pseudo configurations at support. We're doing, here's a proper NDI network and here's how you support it. All right, so let me pull that back up. But you can add external sources directly into Access Manager, and they will show. So I can't actually make that any bigger, can I? No, okay. All right, well, I'll put it here so that we can all see it together. Okay, the next thing we can do, so I'm going to get rid of that because that's not actually a source. Boom. Is that we can add groups. Now, groups is kind of like rooms. Okay. Now, if in terms of a concept, rooms in a building. So we want to have a bunch of classrooms and we want everybody to be on the same network 192.168.10 dot whatever. But we don't want them all to talk to each other because the cameras inside classroom 1 don't need to communicate with the cameras inside classroom 2. So what we can do is we can set up groups and say, I want this computer, for example, like let's say this is the computer at the front of the classroom. I want this computer to only see the NDI sources and decoders inside of that room. Well, we could create a group here under receive and send called classroom 1. And we just standardize this so across your entire network. So it could just be classroom 1, classroom 2, classroom 3, and so on. And you could say like, all NDI sources in classroom 1. And we could say, okay. And there, classroom 1 is now all signals can be received inside this group as classroom 1. Now we want to remove public because if you don't, then any NDI source that's already in the public group, which by default all devices are added to the public folder. So you'd still be able to see everything. So here we want to isolate to just classroom 1. So I would remove the public group and just add classroom 1. Now inside of a BirdDog device then, BirdDog, pull up the P200, which is the camera that you're looking at right now. So inside here, I will take this. Let's just make this full screen so you can see that. Inside here, this is NDI5, by the way. We're going to add, whoops, I need to log in. We're going to add this camera to that group so that it can be shown to any device that's in the receive group there. Now, if I were to generate NDI, by the way, on this computer, which I actually am because I'm doing a desktop capture for my third monitor, if I were to generate NDI and I want those signals to be seen by other devices in the group, I need to add the group to the send group. Okay, so Access Manager gives us that ability right here to add, classroom 1. And you could put a little memo in there if you wanted to. And when you click OK, those things get added to the NDI library that's on this machine. So this machine will know what's going on. Okay, so now that we're logged in here, we can see all of our stats, all that sort of good stuff. Boy, this is really hard to see. This is right behind a light, unfortunately, that's sitting here. Okay, so we want to, if we're going to add groups, we want to go to the NDI group list section, and we want to download the text file that is the group names, and we're going to edit this text file so that we can upload this correctly. So you'll notice that they've done us a huge favor and shown us the formatting that we need to have, to add an additional group to this text file. So we're going to say save. It's going to save it just to that downloads folder, which is where I had that. All right, we can close this now. We can say upload. Oops, sorry. Am I doing that on the right thing? Choose file. There are all the videos for the show. Let's go to downloads, group name, open, and upload. Now it's going to upload this. We're going to go back to the system page. And oh, look, classroom 1 listed on my group list. So now this camera is added to that group. Now you're going to want to take away the other groups if you don't want them to belong to these examples, for example. But now we're added, the groups are all added, and classroom 1, which is the group that we set up in here, is now added. So again, then you'd go to Studio Monitor and verify that you can see the Studio P200, which is this camera right here. So good stuff. All right, we're on track and understanding groups. Now, groups can be added to any of our fleet. The one that I'm not sure about is keyboard, but I will double check that for you and let you know. So let me jump over here real quick. Boom. Okay, so that's how you add into groups. And if you want to now, I should also add here, if you want to remove this computer from that group. You just delete them out of Access Manager. But you need to save them here and hit OK in order for Access Manager to see this group. Now, let's say you have a computer that wants to see all of the groups. You can just open Access Manager on that computer and add all of the groups to send and receive, and then you'd have access to all of those sources. But if you don't, and the cameras are out of the public group and you're out of the public group, you're not going to have access to those. So there you go. There's your little extra tidbit for the day. All right, let's just leave that. I don't need to clear that just yet. The advanced menu is the thing in Access Manager for NDI 5 that really got a big facelift, and it's super handy because it allows us to specify some very specific things about our NDI network. Now, on computers that have multiple NIC cards, sometimes you have an internet NIC card, and then you have an NDI network NIC card, and an isolated NDI network. So we go to a switch and just our cameras are plugged in there. So we go to our 4250, it's in DHCP layer 3. It issues IP addresses to all of our devices that are plugged into it, and then we plug one of our NIC cards, which, like my computer, has 2 NIC ports. We plug one of those into our isolated NDI network. And so we can get internet through the internet NIC card, but we can also get the NDI signals through the other. So here you want to tell Access Manager what is the preferred NIC for your NDI network. And you can select either or of those. And you can even customize those Ethernet 2 names inside of Control Panel. So if I open Control Panel real quick and just show you this, inside here, this is Control Panel, my 2 Ethernet cards, right? We can customize these names if we wanted to, so that it would reflect correctly what whoops, cancel that. Cancel it. So it would reflect correctly which NIC card is which. So let's just say this is my internet and this is my NDI network. Well, you can just rename the NIC card so that this would be, NDI network. And then here, rename, and this could be, internet. Okay, so now let's close this down, reopen Access Manager, say okay, and bring this over here. Now this NIC card, preferred NIC, should show which one is which. And so now I can say my NDI network, this is the NIC card that I prefer you to use on my computer to look for NDI sources. And that's good stuff. Let's go through some of these other things, but that one I really like. If you're running a discovery server or discovery servers, you need to tell Access Manager, and this isn't a discovery server tutorial, so we'll maybe do that another day. But you need to tell Access Manager, for example, if you need this computer to know where those discovery servers are and where those sources are on that network, this is where you would put in, for this computer's knowledge, where those discovery servers are located. So what IP addresses are those discovery servers running at? So the nice thing, too, about this new version is that you can just put commas in between IP addresses and put multiple discovery servers inside Access Manager. So it provides an ability to do redundancy. It also provides an ability to do multiple discovery servers for multiple networks or for a single flat VLAN. For example, if you wanted to separate networks just using discovery server, you can do that now, but give master control to a TriCaster or whatever. You just put in multiple discovery servers and it will catalog all of those sources at all of those discovery servers. It's really sweet. And Discovery Server, again, this isn't a DS tutorial, but Discovery Server is like the unsung hero of the NDI toolkit, which is now included, by the way, in NDI 5 tools. The Discovery Server, you don't have to download the SDK, you can get it off of the tools. Discovery Server is really slick. It does several things. It simplifies a lot of stuff, and it's really the only way to properly do static networks. So there you go. There's your little tidbit. You have to come back and find out why another day. Ooh, I should. Well, we'll check up in the chat in just a minute. So DS is actually really the unsung hero, and if you're using multiples, this is where you put that information in. Okay. This here is telling your computer what type of packets you should be expected to receive, that this computer should expect to receive when it comes to NDI. By default, I believe that it's TCP, single TCP. Um, Auto is recommended. However, if you're using multicast, or I'm sorry, yeah, if you're using multi TCP network layouts, you're using multiple ports, you have to tell it that. And if you're using the new RUDP, which is an NDI5 packet protocol, then yeah, you definitely need to tell it that here in Access Manager. So the RUDP profiles are on the 4250s, for example. And if you're using that, then go into Access Manager and tell your computer, expect RUDP packets because they operate differently than unicast or TCP packets. So that's where you would tell your computer that you're using the new RUDP standard. Okay, lastly, I think, let me look at network mapping. We'll talk about device aliasing as well, I guess. Last is the multicast stuff. If you're using a multicast network, then then you should know this information, or your IT department should know this information and be able to tell you exactly what you need to put in here. But multicast is different than unicast. And inside the BirdDog devices, people just think, okay, I want to use multicast. So I'm just going to go to, what is it, networking, and I'm just going to change it to multicast. And now I'm using multicast. No, that is not a multicast network. That is you changing a setting on a device and telling it, broadcast multicast packets. My network is expecting it. Most networks, especially out of the box networks that you've plugged in from your router from Best Buy, are going to be unicast TCP networks, or UDP if they're real, if it's a lack of quality router, that's what you're going to need to do. So, um, you need to set up a multicast network first, get the information that's going to be required, change it here to multicast, and fill in this information correctly, and then go to Access Manager and also add that information into the multicast area to tell the computer you should be expecting multicast packets out of these NDI devices. So, yeah, that's how you properly do that. But anyways, that's where you would set the multicast information. By default, by the way, um, it's generally these default settings because this is what the SDK on the NDI stuff expects. And so if you're not doing a highly customized multicast packet stuff, it may just be this stuff that's set to default. But check with your IT department if not. And then the NDI device aliases. This is basically if you're generating NDI off of your computer and you want it to have a specific group name, this is where you would set that. So you could say that you want it to say something else like, Knudsen Studio or something like that. I don't know why you would want it to be called Studio. And I can barely see this screen. Hang on, let me make sure that this is spelled correctly. Yeah, okay. So Knudsen Studio, and you can hit OK. When you hit OK, then the changes that you've made will apply. So if you make the changes Access Manager, but you still have it open, they haven't been applied yet. Once you hit OK, then it saves it to the NDI library, and then it's off and running. So now, I don't actually, am I generating any NDI? That's the TC1. I don't know if I'm actually generating NDI. I may need to restart the studio monitor. Actually get that to go. Knudsen Studio. Look at that. So it changed my NDI name, my computer name, to Knudsen Studio. That's what it does. So now any sources that I'm generating out of here should actually. Oh, I'm not doing desktop capture. Hang on one second. What's it called now? Screen share? Screen capture. Okay, so now I turn that on. So now the sources, Knudsen Studio, boom. There are my 3 screens that are being generated out of my graphics card. So that's how you change your name if you want to be generating NDI off of your computer and sending it into the NDI network. Okay, let's just go back. So Access Manager now. So that's the general gist of things when it comes to Access Manager. Now, let's talk about how that integrates in with BirdDog products. And we already talked about this with groups. We should briefly talk about Discovery Server, and then we should talk about decoders, because the decoders is the issue when it comes to Access Manager and groups and all that sort of good stuff. So those are the things we're going to cover next. So For example, if you had, so here is where you put the IP address of your BirdDog device if it was on a different subnet. There's actually no configuration required on the BirdDog side. If you have a device on a different subnet, there's no configuration required. You would go to this side of the receive side of the network where you want to see the source and put it in Access Manager here. And then this computer will be able to check the NDI libraries on its own subnet and also ping that one that you put here saying there's also an NDI source at that location on that subnet at this IP address. Also check there. And so then the computer will, boom, if the computer is permitted to cross subnets and check that IP address for that one source. So, yeah, there's that. Inside groups, again, this is where you add the groups for, in our case, classroom number 1. On the BirdDog device, which I already showed you, you would upload a new group list name, but only include the groups that you want this product to be a part of. By default, it's always a part of the public group. So it will broadcast on public. You need to know that. But if you add classroom 1, as my example, it will also broadcast to that group. But it will be isolated then. You won't be able to see it in other groups or, unless they all belong to the public list. So it broadcasts on public. But if you remove everything and just add this, then it will broadcast on public and classroom. If I don't want to see those sources, I need to delete this, okay? And this is all ungrouped NDI sources. So if you put it in a group, then it's no longer a part of the public group. Which reminds me, I should probably go back and clear that after this show. Okay, so that's how we do groups, which is one of the big features with Access Manager is getting them in the right baskets and then making sure that the correct devices on that network can see that. Now, you do the group process on a flex out the same way that you do the group process on a P200. Okay, you add it to the group list. And then when you click search, it will search that group. It'll search its IP list, but only those that match the group name, and then deliver those as options. So it's a way to isolate your NDI sources without needing to know a whole lot about IP configuration and VLANs and all that sort of good stuff. It's actually quite intuitive, to be quite honest with you. The last item is the discovery server portion. And this one, I'm going to turn that off because I don't need that. The discovery servers is also it's actually a more intuitive way to do groups because you can quickly add things to a discovery server. But on the BirdDog side of things, and I'm going to pull up the P200 here because I should show you this while I do it. On the BirdDog side of things, you want to you can add things to, where is it here? It's under networking, perhaps. They've moved some of this stuff, so I'm a little rusty. Yeah, NDI Discovery Server. Okay, so here you run the product in DHCP mode. It gets an IP address. That's all well and good. But you want to have, boxes, if you will. When you turn on Discovery Server, what it tells the BirdDog device to do is to basically stop broadcasting your information, stop telling everybody who you are. Right now in Studio Monitor, like if Studio Monitor is still open here, if I look at this is just finding sources that are saying, here I am. I'm not running DS, by the way. Here I am. This is where I'm at. This is what I've got. This is, I'm a PF 120, or we can look at Auburn Road, which is outside my office. Here is this camera. Ooh, that was a Mustang. This camera is just looking at, it's just broadcasting its information saying, here's my stream source. And if you want to look at it, go ahead. If I were to point this camera at a discovery server, inside Studio Monitor, it would no longer show up as an option because I've told the BirdDog stop broadcasting your information and send your broadcast info only to this IP address. And so the camera stops sending out the broadcast. It actually lightens the load of the network slightly and starts saying, hey, thing on the network that has Discovery Server, here's my information. Here's my information. Here's my information. It only sends those packets to where I've told it, only communicate your info with this computer. And Discovery Server, if it's up and running, will catalog that information as a source on the network. And then I can tell Access Manager, hey, there is a Discovery Server on this network that I want you to look at. And it's going to be at 192.168.1.12 or whatever. And I can say, okay. And then it will begin to search the network for sources in addition to um, the ones that it already sees. It will start looking at the discovery server for those sources that are only communicating with the discovery server. So Studio Monitor doesn't stop, by the way, or your computer doesn't stop looking and asking for sources and gathering data from the network. But it then can also see all sources that are pointed at the discovery server that are not broadcasting on the network like this. And so if you were to do your entire network with discovery services, which run on Windows PC, it's a little extra work, and it's not quite as isolated as the groups thing. But I actually think it's more counterintuitive because Discovery Server has a live service that runs constantly and knows when things are online and offline. And so super helpful that way. So BirdDog interacts with Access Manager in multiple ways, in particular with groups and Discovery Server. But that is how you do it. That's how you tell, or that's what you would configure inside Access Manager to get your bird dogs to talk correctly with AM. So hopefully that's helpful. I'm going to wrap up that portion of that speech. That was a good 30 minutes just talking that through. And yeah, reach out to us at help@birddog.tv if you have any additional questions, or join us on Tuesday, Thursdays for our live chat that